In this recipe, we're going to look at how to create apply methods in companion objects to be constructors of your class or of your type. So as I note here in the problem statement, in some situations, it may be better, easier, or more convenient to create apply methods in a companion object to work as a class constructor. And actually, some people prefer this approach as a way to create constructors for your classes. They think it's more readable, and then you can find all of your constructors in one place. And I happen to be one of those people. So we'll take a look at how to do that in this video lesson. And that is a note in the solution here. In previous lessons, I talked about how to create a primary class constructor and also auxiliary constructors for classes. But another way you could solve this problem is to create apply methods in a class's companion object. And again, if you recall, a companion object is just an object that has the same name as the class and is defined in the same file as the class. A note here, technically these aren't constructors, they're more like functions or factory methods, but they actually serve a similar purpose, or almost the exact same purpose, because we use them to create instances of our types. So creating a companion object with an apply method just takes a few steps. So for example, assuming that you want to create constructors for a person class, you would define the person class and the person object in the same file. Then you would make the person class constructor private, and then you will define one or more apply methods in the object to serve as builders of the class. So let me move some things around here so we can start coding a little bit. So as usual, I have my article over here, my IDE right here, and then I'm compiling this with Scala CLI and using the watch option, so it will update every time we save our changes over here. So I'll scoot this up now. Yeah, we're just going to follow these steps. So I will create a class person, and then we use a private keyword for here. And this private keyword is the way we make the constructor private. So in this case, I'm just going to say I want to take a name parameter, which is a string. And then there isn't anything else in this class at this time. So as I note in this section here, you can define any instance members you need here. But for our purposes, I'll just put that right there. And now what I want to do is create a companion object for that person. And this companion is going to serve as the constructor. So what we're going to do is say, I want to create an apply method. So the apply method in a companion object is a very specific method. So this method is intended to serve as this constructor or to serve as a factory method. So you'll see in a little while, there's some syntactic sugar that goes along with this, but just know for now that you need to create this with the name apply. So now we'll give that a name there, string, and just to avoid any confusion, let me call that the name here. And then the apply method is going to return a person. And the way we do that is our object can access this private constructor up here. That's one of the benefits of being a companion is we can do that. So now we say new person, and I'm going to pass in the name right there. And here I note that I created a toString method, and that will help us with the debugging here. So we'll do override def toString equals name is all that has to be right there. And we'll come down here. And to test this, I'll just follow what I have in the book for now. So we'll say val. There's a bug in there. That should not be a capital R right there. So val Regina equals person. And that is Regina. And just to test that, we can do a print line on that. And save that. And there you go. You see that result right there. And then the next thing I do is I create a list here. So we can also test that. We can do a print line. And how about if we do a list and we have person, and I had Regina, and then I had Robert right there. So we can do that. And note that my formatting here isn't standard. A lot of people won't like this, but I do that just for readability, especially in training. So if we were to condense all that, it would look like this. So far, so good. And then what I talk about in the discussion here is that the apply method defined in a companion object is treated specially by the compiler. So there's a little syntactic sugar. So basically what I write in the book is that this code right here, and actually let me change that a little bit. So we could say this code right here with my name in there is the same as this code that you're about to see here, person.apply Fred, like that. So now you see Alvin and Fred printed out here. So what happens is the compiler converts this code that you type in into this second code here, the .apply method. So just to be clear about that, you type this code right here. One of the first things the compiler does is it converts that code into this code like that. And that's what I meant when I was talking earlier in this lesson, that the apply method has a special meaning to the compiler. And as a note here, some people refer to apply as being a factory method or even a builder. Technically, it's not a constructor because we have that other syntax for creating constructors. But as I mentioned, a lot of people like this because what happens, and you're about to see this, is that we can put all of our apply methods in the object. And to me, that makes our code a lot easier to read. And now, so you didn't have to watch me type, I went ahead and copied and pasted this code in here. So what I'm doing here is I'm expanding on that. So I changed the person class. So we still have the class person as a private constructor, but now the constructor takes in two var parameters. One is this name, which is a string. The other one is this age, also a var, and it's an int. And then I overrode the toString method to look like this now. And then what I did inside of here, inside the companion object, is I created these three ways to build a person. So now if we're given empty parentheses like this one right here, where nobody passes in any information, then I put some default information in there. So I put in a blank string right here and then 0 for the age. So you can think of this code right here. As I mentioned before, this code is actually calling this private constructor. So it's passing in a blank string for the name here and then 0 for the age right there. So this actually already ran down there. Save that. Oh, sorry, I was thrown off by that space, but that's actually doing exactly what it's supposed to, as I note over here. So name is that empty string, so it's printing out basically empty string space is 0 years old. So that's this first instance right here, this line right here. Then in the second apply method, what I do is I let callers create an instance with just the name of the person. So here, then I pass in the name to the person constructor and I default their age to 0. So that's what we see in this example with Regina. And I don't pass in the age, so then it defaults to 0 years old. And then finally, the third apply method, I allow people to pass in the name and the age. Then I pass both of those over to the private constructor. And I call that in the third example. So we see Robert is 22 years old with that one right there. So again, a really cool thing about this approach is, number one, you can keep all these apply methods together inside of a companion object. And in a case like this, where you have nothing else in your companion object, it's really clean and easy to read. The other approach, as I've mentioned before, in the cookbook and in previous videos, is that if you wanted to create constructors, you would have def this, and then you would have constructors inside of here, and then you would have another def this with other parameters and so on. And personally, I don't like that approach. I like this approach quite a bit, and this is what I do in all of my new code because I think it's easier to read and then it's easier to find as well. Then I note in this next section that because apply is just a function, you can implement it however you want to. So if you wanted to create a person from a tuple or even a variable number of tuples, you can do that with these two apply methods right here. So I normally don't like to show off my typing skills, but let's go ahead and create those. So here I'm going to create another apply method, and I'm going to create this from a tuple. So I'm allowing you to pass in a tuple. So tuples are enclosed in parentheses like that. So I'm going to say I want to let you pass in a string and an int as a tuple, and then we're going to create a new person from that. So again, we'll say person equals, that'll be new person. And now I'm going to pass those tuple elements into there. So you can see the IDE is prompting for name and age. So the first one is going to be tuple element 0, and then the second one is tuple element 1, like that. So again, that allows me to create a person from a tuple. So now we can say print line, person, and then I want to pass in that tuple. So I could pass in Alvin there, and then we could say, oh, I don't know, 42 or something like that, and save that. So that shows the tuple apply constructor. And now what I want to do is let you pass in a variable number of tuples. So if I use t for one tuple, then I will use ts for a variable number. And remember, the way you create varargs parameters is just to add a star right there. So now this lets you pass in a variable number of tuples. And then the only thing you have to do here is say, well, for T in TS, so for every tuple in the list of tuples that you're giving me, yield a new person like that. And oops, one thing I did there, this does not return a single person. This returns a sequence of people, or a sequence of person, sorry. So sequence of person. There we go. So now that compiles. So again, you can pass in a variable number here. So now we could say something like print line. And here I will pass in person. And now I'm going to put some tuples inside of here. So the first one could be something like Ken and 33. And then we could put, I don't know, Julia. She'd be 36, something like that. And save that. And then you see this result down here. So again, what I'm trying to do in this example is show how to create a sequence of person, as shown right there, from the tuples that you passed in right here. And in all of this, all I'm trying to do is show how to create all of these apply methods. And you can see now that we're creating more and more apply methods, how nice it is to be able to just see all of those in one place right here. And then down here in the See Also section, as I mentioned before, I talked about how to create a primary constructor and then multiple auxiliary constructors for classes. And again, these days I prefer this approach, so that's what I recommend. If you ask me, I will say I recommend this. And then apply works like a constructor, as I note right here, and unapply as its opposite, known as an extractor. And I'll show that in another video. But basically, we use apply to construct instances of our objects, and then you can also create unapply methods inside your companion object right here. And in those, you will actually deconstruct your object. So there you would turn a person into a string or turn a person into something else using unapply. And again, I'll cover that in another video. So in summary, if you wanted to see how to use apply methods in companion objects to work like constructors, I hope these examples have been helpful.